Good morning. By day, I'm a GIS coordinator for the Chesapeake Bay program in Annapolis, Maryland. I work with the U.S. Geological Survey. In my free time, I'm a information interaction design graduate student at the University of Baltimore. So my presentation is a little bit of a mashup of those two roles. I'm going to be talking about landscape visualization in the Chesapeake Bay watershed and the potential role for geodesign to achieve some communication and educational roles. First of all, Chesapeake Bay is the largest estuary in the United States. It's located in the mid-Atlantic region. It is very productive ecologically and economically. However, it is impaired under the Clean Water Act, and as a result, there's been an effort over the last, really, 3 decades to help restore that bay. It's currently, we currently have a governance agreement, which is the Chesapeake Bay Watershed Agreement, that really goes way beyond the water quality focus of the program originally to a wide variety of other topics: fisheries, healthy watersheds, vital habitats, climate issues, and so forth. And so with this agreement, there are these goals, and then there are these 31 outcomes that come with those goals. And those outcomes tend to be sort of a look towards desired future conditions. So it's not just what are we doing on the landscape right now, but where do we want to be, say, in the next 10 years. So with that is sort of the context. The focus here on my research interest as well is whether interactive 3D landscape visualization is effective at communicating a wide variety of natural resource issues, specifically conservation and restoration issues. And then can it be used to communicate aspects of landscape change as it impacts ecosystem services. So we have a long history with science communication, not necessarily very good at it sometimes. This is a conceptual diagram, a graphic showing good and bad cartoon illustrations, if you will. This kind of thing is used a lot. But I've always felt, well, we can do a lot better than this in terms of a cartoon graphic. We should be able to actually leverage 3D landscape visualization to have actual place-based representations of these ecosystems. So I was being very lazy, I was looking for a solution that wouldn't involve a lot of programming or anything like that, and I came upon Esri's Local Government Solutions 3D base maps, which actually seems to work pretty well, but there's some other solutions I'm looking at as well. The Beta 3D flood impact and the proposed developments, all of these relate to landscape visualization capabilities. Basic data requirements are LIDAR and building footprints. And then in our case, we're fortunate to have high resolution land cover and land use 1 meter data watershed wide. And then we pull in other things like things from the Living Atlas as appropriate. So just cutting to the chase, what this looks like, this is a LIDAR-derived elevation surface in Loudoun County, Virginia. Then populating building footprints with multi-patch, extruding them from the distance between the elevation model and the surface model, and then populating the landscape in terms of where you have vegetation, where you have a difference between an elevation and surface that's not a structure, to populate trees. So in a nutshell, that's the procedural beginnings of how we generate a landscape like this. So I wanted to first test, is this going to be applicable in a wide variety of applications that are relevant to Chesapeake Bay conservation and restoration? So I sort of sampled around the watershed for some issues that I know are important. Climate issues, stormwater issues, for example, flood mitigation. This is in Fairfax County, Virginia, in an urban-suburban setting. And being able to, again, this is a PowerPoint, obviously, but these are 3D web scenes that you can navigate and cruise around and explore things. We have population growth and development issues. This is in Loudoun County, Virginia, where we have existing development and then proposed developments populating it based on current zoning. Norfolk, Virginia is kind of ground zero for sea level rise, and so this is using the flood impact solution for populating that area. This is kind of a fairly effective tool that gained a lot of prominence down there. And then we have areas like in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, that are sort of notorious, if you will, for nutrient and sediment pollution. And so we're the focus of various land best management practices. And so what would that look like to visualize different practices? This is just an area of reforestation on a farmland, and relatedly, this is a riparian forest buffer project, a hypothetical project along a stream in Lancaster County. And then finally, bringing in other data sets, this is a layer from the Living Atlas, which is the protected lands data set in a relatively pristine area on the western shore of the Chesapeake, being able to look at the degree of protection in addition to just visualizing the landscape. So that's kind of a descriptive qualitative view of some of these topics and how we might visualize them. But we also, for my research, I also want to be understanding whether there's the ability to quantify these benefits and whether a user or a stakeholder could actually help to understand, in this case, ecosystem services through landscape visualization. This is going to be the focus of my research. And ecosystem services can be a complicated topic. I'm not even going to try to explain the details behind it or the mapping of it. But in its most simple state, you can think of it as, for a particular ecosystem service, what kind of geospatial data exists that might replicate or represent that service. And in its most simple, it might be just a land cover map and trying to relate, for example, the provision of fiber to forest land or something like that. So you can look at this table, and you're not too far from actually thinking about a suitability model. So this is actually a suitability model in GeoPlanner on the right that's looking at the provision of fiber relative to that same landscape, and the white lines represent catchment boundaries, sort of small watersheds, that then you can develop a dashboard to score those catchments based on the output of that suitability model. And that's the fiber example. Another example might be food. Again, this is just a suitability model developed using the green infrastructure template in GeoPlanner. Hopefully I'll be replacing this with the high-resolution land cover in the future. But again, just as a quick aside, I thought, this is kind of interesting, being a non-programmer, the ability for me to take a map journal story map and then embed a configurable web application with the side-by-side arrangement, and then have the output, a web scene coming from the local government 3D solutions in the middle, and then a suitability model output from GeoPlanner, also served up as a web scene, basically mashed up into one web page. Again, I'm thankful. Shout out to Esri for enabling a non-programmer to be able to do that. So just in final, these are sort of my research questions for the academic side. I'm interested in knowing which of these outcomes of the Bay Watershed Agreement can be effectively visualized in terms of a before and after condition as a communication tool. And then secondly, are there differences in the utility of this among different stakeholder groups? I work with a lot of scientists and resource management professionals that they might say, well, that's kind of cool, but we're scientists and we need a lot of numbers and tables and so forth. But there might be opportunities with local stakeholders where this might resonate a little bit more with them. In addition, I have access to some environmental sustainability students at the university. And then finally, is it more effective or not than just a two-dimensional map of the same information? And it may vary by what kind of ecosystem service or what kind of Chesapeake Bay Watershed Agreement outcome that I'm trying to communicate. So those are sort of the key pieces of my academic research interests. And that's it. So thank you very much.